Thank you very much for everyone in the accounting and finance community for joining us again for another webinar session with our team, and have the pleasure of bringing in Jonathan Peters, who I'll introduce in just a moment. But for everyone who is just coming onto the call today, really appreciate you spending some time with us and really getting as much value as you can out of these sessions. We find that through the surveys and through conversations I've been having a lot of with people in the communities, the insights that we're able to bring to the table through the different subject matter experts and people like Jonathan, who are in senior executive chairs with that finance background, are really sharing insights that are changing the lives of people in our community. Some ideas that they share, just little anecdote stories, things that resonate with you to your own career challenges that you're working through at any time. So, guys, really appreciate for all the feedback you've been offering. I'm glad to see that everyone's enjoying that. So I'll give everyone a little bit more time to join, but just for a general housekeeping, if you do have any questions today, and I'm sure Jonathan will be very happy to answer, please use the question box, and you'll see that if you're using a mobile, just at the bottom there. If you can't hear me, or if there's any technical issues, please put a note in there as well, and I'll address that as we go through the session. But these days technology is pretty good, and we should have good fun with it. But guys, just to briefly introduce Jonathan and appreciate his time today. Jonathan is a very experienced CFO and General Manager who's worked with primarily the FMCG space over many years. Currently the CFO of a really interesting business, a rapidly expanding organisation in the retail space, a company called the Real Pet Food Co. It does some nice goodies for our pets, and a really interesting market that's expanding as people really look after their pets in a new way these days, particularly focused on natural and fresh ingredients that are involved in their foods. But as you'll see, if anyone that's looking at the screen right now, Jonathan's got the dog next to him. He's quite passionate about the work that they do in that business, and he might share a bit more about that today. But today's topic's on creativity, empowerment, and not being perfect. It's a pretty broad topic. Jonathan's going to go into a few different stories that should be interesting today. But as someone who has been in leadership roles for some time, there's a lot that we'll be able to take out of Jonathan. We'll get as much as we can out of his brain in the hour we've got available, and hopefully we'll have a bit of fun in the meantime. So without me stealing all your thunder, Jonathan,
sure.
Thank you very much for being here today.
No problem. That's my pleasure, and hope that everyone gets something out of it today.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. Mate, can you start off with just providing some context? I think it's always really helpful to hear the journey and the story of the people we speak to.
Sure.
And just a bit of a summary on where you've been and
Yep.
where some of these stories might come from today.
Okay. I suppose starting back, originally from New Zealand, studied my finance in New Zealand part-time. So I didn't have the opportunity to do full-time uni. So I started a career now over 30 years ago. Still feels like yesterday in some ways. I can still remember my first day, just about walking in as an accounts clerk, starting right at the root of any business and understanding the base of the financial transactions and how it impacts. Went through and studied my part-time, spent first, I suppose 10 years of my career in New Zealand, and then with a combination of manufacturing was probably quite a base, IT, banking as well, and then also had a great opportunity to join Team New Zealand, the America's Cup team.
Yeah, awesome.
That won the America's Cup in 1995. So and that's where especially leadership really came through. Not for me personally at that time, but really observation of real true leadership of, in that case, a sporting team versus, but it was a business. And observing that and being part of that was a fantastic event in my life, and definitely set me up for a lot of other things going forward. After that, moved from New Zealand, actually moved to the UK, where my wife is from. So we actually went from New Zealand to the UK and started there with Kellogg's, and spent 10 years with Kellogg's in a number of senior finance roles. 5 years in the UK itself, covering both, once again, manufacturing into IT, European projects, and then into 5 years in the UK, then spent almost 3 years in Japan as the finance director for Kellogg's Japan, which was another kind of change, and that gave me a senior finance role, responsible for a business unit, part of a global business, started to interact more with the kind of head office side of things and started to be more exposed to that, but also had a first opportunity to also not only work in a very different culture, but also did some general management work there as well as we went through and had a change in leadership in the business. Then that led me through to spending some time in Kellogg's in the US before coming to Australia as finance director for Kellogg's Australia New Zealand for a couple of years. Before it was kind of on the expat train, which is an interesting journey in itself, both personally, career-wise, and for the family.
Absolutely.
So that kind of brings out a lot of stories, you see a lot of things, you get exposed to a lot of things, which is great. And then the opportunity came along to go back to the UK. It was most likely actually at that time back to Ireland, or to Ireland, which wasn't really what the right fit for my family was. So we decided to stay in Australia, which unfortunately led to leaving Kellogg's. Yes. But that's where I joined Associated British Foods. So here in Australia, more commonly known as George Weston Foods. And I joined a business unit of ABF called AB Maori, and then took on a regional Asia role, which was once again from a finance perspective and management perspective, a different role than I had done before, where being more of a regional role where you're not actually directly responsible for a business unit, but you're responsible for a number of business units, and from a financial point of view, understanding and that our region, we're based in Australia, but we're responsible for Australia, New Zealand, China, Indonesia, Japan, Korea, etc. Gave once again a number of different challenges, aspects, different learnings, different ways of managing from afar versus having a team that you interact with daily, face to face. A lot of travel, which has a lot of interesting stories to it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then that's what led to some change in the way we structured the business, what led to me being General Manager, Managing Director of the AB Maori Australia New Zealand business, which was that transition into a full responsibility for a full business unit, which I was ready for at that time. And that was a interesting change, a change I actually felt was fairly, was easier than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, good.
One, I think I was ready for it, and some of the roles which I'll touch on later, through both times in New Zealand, then times in Kellogg's, etc., really did start to set me up for those leadership roles and so forth as we went through. That then led to, after 5 years in a general managing director role, another change came along. Took some time out, and then I joined Real Pet Food Company.
Yeah, awesome.
And been with Real Pet Food for about the last 18 months, and that's been a exciting, challenging, interesting, number of different superlatives. Some I probably can't say out live, but that's been very interesting. Private equity owned, which has its own kind of influence, own direction on things, but a category, as you mentioned, that is actually fastest growing, one of the fastest growing categories, pet categories globally. We're positioning ourselves very much in an area that we feel is not only locally but globally able to take a lot of get a lot of growth in the business. We've been on a very strong acquisition mode, which has been another learning for me as well, and just the growth and managing business at a very, very fast pace, and really challenged your leadership styles in a lot of ways because of the pace that we've been trying to move at.
Absolutely.
And that when reflecting on this session today, it's been quite it's been good to kind of reflect and look at the career and understand where there's been definitely times where choices, and a lot of times choices I've made weren't really planned. I've been very fortunate in that opportunities come along, but I think you make your own opportunities, and you got to be in. Sometimes you got to be in the right place, but you also got to be the right person, be doing the right things, and showing that you've got the capability to keep on growing and going further as well, to get those opportunities. So you still need to earn them in areas. But no, it's been an interesting career so far. Still some life in me to keep going, even though I still feel young at heart. But yeah, no, 50 years old now, but still feel like after 30 years plus of finance and senior roles in businesses, still a lot to offer and hopefully a lot to learn as well.
Absolutely. I'm sure you've got plenty to offer. You've plenty more legs in you, Jonathan. But it's an interesting theme that you pick up and we've seen this quite consistently with some of the really strong finance leaders and general managers we've worked with, is that change journey, particularly lots of expat type experiences, moving overseas, lots that you pick up on from changing to different organisations, different cultures, and no doubt now you continue to learn, don't you? But
yes.
What I wanted to explore, and I'm going to dig into this career journey and some of the things that you value, but one of the things that I think would be a really interesting starting point is to explore the first time that you felt like you shifted from manager to leader, and what that might have felt like, and how that came about.
Yeah, I think maybe I could. I'll start with probably reflecting on this. The area where I felt that change occurred was I had a commercial business partner, finance business partner role in Kellogg's UK, working for sales and marketing teams, and those roles are fantastic in that they are ones where you really are working with the business on the now and the future, versus looking at the past and trying to understand why things haven't been, or why good or bad. But the leadership thing came in when I became part of the sales leadership team, or the sales and marketing leadership team, and I started to feel that transition from being more of a, I suppose, not just the doing and so forth, but the idea generation, and actually seeing your ideas from a commercial perspective, not just from a finance perspective, actually start to be implemented by other people, and actually be taken on board. And actually, one of the things I have mentioned a few times to a few people is that I remember one time when one of the sales team need a simple thing, their expenses signed off before they could process it, and another person, or their manager and other people in the sales leadership team weren't available. So they asked me to sign it, and I said, why I can't sign this. He said, but you're on the sales leadership team. Sure, you can.
It's your thing.
It's your thing, you're part of the team. And that was like a real kind of recognition of, one, you are part of the team. You have started to move from, you got that financial training, that financial discipline, you got that know-how, understanding, etc. But you have now started to transition to more of a business leader. But then, so that was one thing, but then also, just as I mentioned, that you actually start to lead the business and bring your ideas to the table, talk through them, be involved in the strategy, not just from a financial perspective, but from a total, I think sometimes, you do kind of get outside your kind of comfort zone a little bit, which is good in regards to now trying to put your marketing hat on and have an opinion on a TV ad or a campaign, but you're also then looking at it from a financial return point of view as well. So, but really, I think that was the start of really seeing that I was seen and started to act as a leader.
Excellent. And did you find that at that time, was that did that feel organic and natural, or did you feel like you were moving out of your comfort zone?
It did feel, it was pushing me outside my comfort zone, as we've touched on, and you've mentioned in the kind of the write-up about, I do see myself as an introvert. And I remember one sales meeting I was at, that we did the extrovert, introvert type thing, and of course all the salespeople were all on one side of the room, all extroverts, and I was pretty much standing by myself. And the sales team looked at me and went, "No, you're not an introvert." So I'm one of those people, I think, when I need to be, and I need to be in there to lead and to get people to influence and so forth, the introvert doesn't come through. So I can't play a role that I know I'm trying to achieve something, and therefore for a lot of people they didn't see me as an extrovert or introvert. They saw me as an extrovert type thing. But yeah, no, it didn't necessarily come naturally, because I do, I suppose, hold back sometimes. And I think that's something I've overcome over the years, and still kind of go back and forth into that, but more so now, like doing this session today. Probably wouldn't have thought of doing it probably even 5 years ago.
Interesting.
And actually doing the GM role for AB Maori was another kind of challenge, as much as I felt ready and so forth, to actually start holding town hall meetings and actually putting yourself out in front of the business and putting yourself out in front of customers as well. And representing the business and actually being a leader. So I didn't find, I suppose, doing the leadership side or the transition difficult, but I probably did have to push myself to, and it didn't really just come naturally happen. I think I was conscious that I was having to push a bit harder to go, yep, you can do it, get up there, do your presentation and hold yourself together and share your voice, because people do want to hear what you have to say.
Absolutely.
And so forth. And that sometimes, just for an introvert or somebody shy or may not have high confidence or whatever, that's a bit of a challenge sometimes just to overcome, but you can overcome it.
Absolutely. And it's interesting you say that, because we see this quite a lot, and we'll move on to the next question I'm about to ask you, but we do see that often accountants may be positioned in that back office position, and may even be introverts, maybe extroverts. It doesn't really matter.
No, it doesn't.
But I do think one of the shifts we're starting to see in terms of commercial interaction, dealing with customers, dealing with any sort of form of influence, these days people want to see substance and want to actually see a sense of knowledge on the subject. And that's probably something we'll start to move on to, which is idea generation, right? And you often find that there's been a lot of accountants and environments where idea generation has been stopped or squashed. And perhaps there's not that confidence to bring ideas to the table, or maybe it's because of that feeling of confidence, or maybe it's a lack of substance. But at the end of the day, just interested in your views on why you believe that might be the case in certain environments, and from what you've seen in the accounting community.
It really does come down to the leaders of the business, because in Kellogg's, with probably a management team, senior management team, Kellogg's board level, started to change, I suppose, with people that had the current, if he's still the current CEO, was the CFO of Kellogg's, and that transition of, I suppose, financial acumen coming through, but also business acumen, and actually supporting the voice from the top, supporting and actually promoting and looking for people who are business partners from a financial point of view. And Kellogg's was very, very clear and very strong on that basis. And I was at the time, really benefited from that, because they were looking for people who could play a clear part and were training us and developing us to challenge. Obviously, you've got to challenge in the right way.
Of course.
You can't, say it's my way or the highway when you're, junior accountant or even a finance director. You got to kind of bring your ideas to the table and bring them into the conversation in a way that you're challenging, influencing in the right way. So I suppose to answer your question, I think it comes down to the senior management. I think, yes, in environments that there isn't that understanding of what, not just finance, but any function, what they can bring to the conversation and bring to the discussion, then that's disappointing, but it does unfortunately happen. How to change that can sometimes be difficult if there's a leader in a business that is just doesn't understand, doesn't take on the benefit of that joint or kind of inputs from various people. That's more challenging. I think you can still find ways of achieving and working around it. But I was both in Kellogg's and ABF both had very good leadership teams above me and senior members within the business that were all about empowering and very much encouraging you to have your say. And managers, as I say, then now you always got the odd ones. Not everyone's perfect, and Kellogg's or ABF. You always got, sometimes there was someone who just would not quite be on the same page and had their own style or influence and so forth, and it was their way, and that's the only way it was going to be. But generally, there was, we've been lucky or have experienced where the, and it wasn't just me, it was across, so it wasn't just me experience, it was actually, we could see it that that's the way they were treating everyone. And every leader was kind of being trained and developed to accept input from cross-functionally and working together and collaboration, etc. So it was something that the senior leaders of the business I've worked with have embraced and endorsed and walked the walk. They really did made it easy for you to feel that you had the confidence to say something, because that's what they're telling you that they want you to do. And I suppose when you started to do it and you felt that, hey, it is safe to do it, and actually it is being taken on board, et cetera, and you're getting, when you start to hear people feedback through different channels, you hear third-hand that about something that you've mentioned, and then it's coming back and it's now, whether it's being promoted as your idea or someone else's idea, it doesn't really matter. I mean, you start saying, hey, I'm actually being listened to, and I'm actually what they're telling us and developing us and how they want us to be leaders and how they want us to be part of the business is actually real. It's not actually just a nice phase or a nice trend that let's kind of focus on collaboration and empowerment. They actually did it.
Yeah. It's so interesting how powerful it is to be around great leaders to become a great leader.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose I've experienced, been very lucky, experienced some very, very good ones and at least one great one.
Yeah, brilliant. I think for anyone listening on the line, I think Jonathan's comments there really illustrate that need to be around leaders, or at least be in an environment that does encourage idea generation. Because if you are going to be able to move through that environment, or if you're already in that space now and you hold the title of authority, but you're actually not playing a leadership role or strategic role, you'd question whether you're in an environment that's going to get the best out of you. But
correct.
Moving forward, Jonathan, one of the things I want to look up to is this concept of being perfect with reporting and numbers. Not everyone has it, and I'm sure there's some very commercial listeners on the call, but as a concept, there might be people in their team that behave this way, or there might be challenges that certain people have around perfection. How does that serve a finance person when it comes to steering a business, and where are the pitfalls, I guess, that you've seen and would be a concern?
Yeah, I suppose to clarify, I mean, there's areas of finance that have to be perfect. The monthly numbers, et cetera, the reporting, your tax, so forth. There's you have to be the best you can and making sure that it's accurate and timely and so forth.
Absolutely.
But the accuracy side of things, I feel, is on that, the future. And, we are about, there's one thing to report what's happened in the past and make sure that all that's nice and neat and tidy and clean and so forth. But what I've really focused on, I've always really kind of focused on for many years, is, well, we need to know what's happening, in maybe 1 week's time, 3 months' time, 12 months' time. And the speed of getting that insight and understanding is not necessarily being perfect with the numbers and even being in the great detail. Because we can all be, and I've been there with dozens of spreadsheets and lost in the numbers and can't really see the big picture. And you take a summary to someone else and they go, well, that doesn't look right. And you've been so lost in the detail trying to make it accurate and perfect that you've missed the whole picture.
That makes the picture,
and you haven't actually taken on board what we actually want to know is, do we need to go and well, take some action, whether it be positive or negative, to actually get us back on path or actually help to accelerate growth. And actually getting that insight as quickly as possible and getting it in a, whether it's 80-20 or just that guidance. And the timeliness of that is important. Now you can always, versus via, improved tools and information flow these days, you can definitely obviously make things, get that information to be more and more accurate, whether it be a SNOP, IBP process, whether it be your annual planning process, etc. But so many of these things take so long that by the time you get to see what we think the answer could be, the year might have already started, and it's very different.
Yeah, you're completely right. Yeah.
So that just getting, I suppose, accountants, and I've experienced it through many years, that getting people to move from that, where they've come through maybe the financial accounting, auditing, it's very much about being accurate, perfect, etc. Yep, that's right for those roles. But getting the transition to, and don't lose track of wanting to be accurate, but let's not make it necessarily priority one, because speed and getting the right discussions happening. Because sometimes even getting a heads up that we might be heading down to be off plan or we got an opportunity, the quicker we can actually put plans in place to accelerate or change, the better we all going to be.
The better we are, yeah. So speed's important. So as an MD, you've been an MD, you're running a significant sized business, and as a CFO or a finance function reporting to you, what do you look for? What are some of those traits that you want to see from them in terms of engaging with you and helping you come to solutions, like you said, very quickly? What are some of the things you look for?
Well, it's very much bringing the facts, trying to then looking at those trends and bringing not just here's what I think looks like it could happen, but here's some solutions as well. So I'm very open to seeing here's what I'm seeing, and I think here's some ideas of how we could change it, whether it be something on the financial side about working capital or whatever, or whether it be actually something they think, from a commercial point of view, why don't we try this? Because ideas and can come from anywhere, but it's getting them to kind of bring the big picture.
Yeah. Okay.
And but show that it does link to the facts. It does have some basis of trend or substance. It's not just kind of a kind of one-off kind of number that doesn't have some substance. You got to still got to support it and back it up.
Yeah.
But don't spend 2 weeks doing it, because in 2 weeks' time it's probably changed, or we've lost the opportunity. Yeah. To either correct it or to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
So it's trying to get that balance between of just bringing the information through as quickly as you can, with obviously knowing that it's not perfect, it's not the full story, and the first discussion might be, you might be on something. Then we can make a decision: have we got more time to dig into this more before we take it any further, or take any action, or no, there's enough here that I think we need to go and, where it be take it up the line, where we need to go and talk to supply chain, sales, whatever, about what we're seeing, and whether they've got some other data that actually supports it, or they go, no, they said, no, there might be just a blimp. Like, yeah, we did have some problems, X, Y, Z. We actually were in the customer yesterday and it's sorted. Oh, okay. So we got. So it's just trying to be nimble, trying to be speed, bring it to you as soon as you can, and then we can decide whether we need to do more work on it before we can take it further, or
at least explore the question.
Explore the question. And start explore it, and allow us to understand whether there's something to do. And sometimes I've experienced, you go, yep, can see it, but you already know something that go, you might not know this, but if we're about to do X, Y, Z, that's probably going to influence that. And they go, oh, okay, fine. No worries.
Yep.
But it's at least it's showing that you kind of also understand the business, I think.
Completely.
Rather than being too ruled by numbers, but actually thinking about it and going, well, and thinking about the cause and effect as well.
So there's probably quite a few leaders on the call or people managing as well. How do you make it okay, right? So what's your reaction got to be, or the culture and environment you create to allow finance professionals in your team to feel okay about coming up with those sorts of solutions or create those conversations, and what structural boundaries might you put around that?
I probably don't get it perfect myself every time, because you always have different things happening in various times, but very open door, very, kind of something I did many years ago and kind of always try to do this, is that be here now. So if someone's giving you the time to come and talk to you, turn your phone over, push the monitor screen away, whatever, stop typing, and actually be with that person then, so they feel that, one, you are getting their attention and time, and that they've got the opportunity to discuss it with you. Yeah. And I suppose it's then, well, what's your reaction?
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of like, do you go, and sometimes, depends what it is, I probably have gone, what the is happening there? Didn't see that one coming, and you might, kind of have, but I think it's just then, it's not a blame, it's not kind of, and definitely not trying to make sure the person understands that it's, that what they might be bringing you is not, it's not their problem. It's not their fault.
Don't shoot the messenger.
Don't shoot the messenger, correct. But it's kind of, so it's two things, making sure you give them the time. So for me, it's open door, it's making sure you give people the time, because they've taken the time to come to see you. And then your reaction to that, and sometimes if it's a real kind of surprise, then you probably have got the the right go to be surprised and go, what the is going on here? But I you try and keep calm and just kind of make sure you don't react, kind of like in a way that they go, shit, I'm not going to come and tell him that next time, because whether that was meant to me or not, wasn't worth it.
Exactly, yeah. And it's interesting, I think for a lot of finance professionals, at times they feel the numbers are a reflection of them, and they can get defensive of that, when in fact it's a collaborative team piece, and in fact they are holding that influence and insight that allows everyone to make decisions really well, and maybe shouldn't take it personally if there are some surprises that start to pop out.
Yeah, I think that's where, for me, business partner, and that's how, everyone in finance can be a business partner. I know there's a few roles within a, whether it be a shared service or financial control, transactional area, that can't always interact as much as they'd probably want to, and depends on how their career progresses, that will come. But when you're in a role that is about business partnering, you got to embrace that properly, and that's for them to be a business partner. You got to give them that time to come and feel it's safe to come and tell you anything that they're working on, whether it's right or wrong. It doesn't matter. At least make sure they feel that they can come and discuss anything with you. And that's not always possible, because you sometimes got lots of things on. But I try to make sure I am, as much as I can be, always ready to listen, because I can't be everywhere. I don't know everything, and therefore getting insights from the team is very important to understand what might be going on in the detail that you might be missing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important, I think, for anyone listening. It's you start to appreciate over time. You can't be the master of everything, can you?
No, you can't. And that's a change and a challenge in itself, when you move from smaller teams or smaller business units into bigger businesses, and knowing when to get into detail. Sometimes you have to, because it depends what it is. But sometimes letting go and not trying to be the master of everything, is a change and a transition itself as well.
Absolutely. So you talked about people coming to you with insight or value, right? There's this term value add gets used all of the time. In conversations I have with people about the way they want there to be perceived as a value adder. But when we consider this, often when I talk to leaders like yourself, there's a difference between value and noise. So how does an individual start to differentiate or diagnose or self-diagnose when what they're considering or what they're creating or what they're sharing is valuable, or whether it's just noise and distraction and perhaps doesn't add to you helping a leader or helping the business overall?
Okay. For me, it's just trying to think of people I've worked with and myself as well. For me, it's something that some people, I think, learn it and get it quicker. I don't know if it's. I think I've had experience where, even when someone who has lives in detail and that's what makes them comfortable. That's the way they need to build everything up and work on it, and that they don't feel comfortable bringing anything unless you can drill down 10 different ways to kind of test that every number's correct. Is just really, I suppose, coaching and developing as best you can, but I think some people don't quite do struggle to look at and keep an eye on the bigger picture and not get tied up in the detail too much and make the time to, where they work in the detail, then if it's not always possible, to then stand back and go, what's this telling me? Before I go kind of shoot off and try and be first to tell Jonathan this information. Well, maybe I better kind of try and make sure I understand it myself first, actually take the time to actually review and understand it and really relate it to the business. Because the business partner should be those who are all you want in the business, but the finance business partners, they should know the business very, very well and know exactly how to articulate what they're seeing and what they're kind of being participating in regards to various discussions around the business to actually bring you informed business context and bring you that solution.
Yeah, it's interesting. Value, often we see this, I've heard this term described as the sitting at the intersection of the problem and the solution. And do you find that often the problems or the strategy or the business needs to be understood quite well first, that before you can provide that insight? And if someone's trying to come towards that, is it a case of actually learning the business through action and engagement? Is that a strategy you encourage?
Yeah, you can't definitely learn it from your desk. You need to go and touch it, feel it. I mean, I was with Kellogg's and now with Real Pet Food, definitely spend time used to be in the cereal aisle, in the pet food aisle now, with our consumers, customers, and going, well, what's happening in the competition? What are they doing? What's happening with us? How are we looking? How many facings we got? Visiting the plants. And not everyone can go and do this, but in a business partner role, you do need to get away from your desk and experience the business from internally as well as externally to give you that business understanding. Because that's where the numbers will tell you a lot of things. It won't give you all the answers or won't give you all the information you need to really bring that solution that add that value and actually see, as you say, it might be all there in front of them, but without the business knowledge and understanding of what the business is actually trying to do from a strategy and execution in different ways, you might miss actually a very important thing, that the numbers might be saying one thing or might be there right in front of you, but you can't see it.
You just can't see it. Yeah, it's interesting. This might lead on, and we'll possibly move a little bit ahead into this conversation, but you talked before about it being in a reasonably easy transition to the MD or GM role. And what is curious is that there's a lot of finance professionals that are keen to leave finance and broaden their territory. In fact, we did a survey a little while back where 30% of finance professionals that were surveyed actually wish they never started finance in the first place,
Right. Yep.
or a career in accounting.
Yep.
But what's really interesting is that some people do feel that that transition is more difficult than than you've described. So, why do you think you were able to make that transition into GM and into business leadership roles or broader business leadership roles quite effectively?
I suppose for me it really came down to that I've experienced business from the grassroots right through as well. Being very practical, very I do learn a lot hands-on, quick learner. But that I didn't. I suppose I got to a point in my finance career where being an FD, being a senior finance person, and being that business partner, I keep on using that, but me, we were business partner, part of your title or what it might be, or even your finance director, CFO, you are a business partner to the CEO, MD, whatever it might be, and you are a partnership, and you start to act as a true partner. You actually do need to not that you act like them, but you actually start to, you don't actually do accounting. You are managing the business with the leadership team, and quite often directly one-on-one with the CEO, MD, etc. of the business. And you are having business discussions, and you're bringing. I always found I'd have my financial kind of numbers and bits and pieces to help support a certain view and so forth. But I found that via having general business discussions, whether it be on supply chain, whether it be on manufacturing, whether it be on marketing, etc. So you get that time. I suppose I had that time with leaders one-on-one a lot of time, whether it be through the travel I have done over my career, being in senior roles in different business in different countries, where especially as an expat, you do, whether that helped become, to spend more time with the MD or so forth. But I don't think so. I think it was more a case of, for me, I'd spent so much time being that, number two, so to speak, even though I might have been wearing the finance hat. When it came to being the GM, I suppose had observed, I had learnt, I had acted as either interim in some cases, and especially when CEO simply goes on travel or on vacation. I'm the interim for the period. And so I suppose those experiences over probably easily 10 years prior to actually being fully appointed as you are now, GM of this business unit, I had already probably gone through 10-year training program. Without really realising I was. So when it came to then being the MD, since I'd always felt that I always was, contributing across all business functions, I didn't feel that I was leaving finance. I think I'd already left finance to a large degree and had left the accounting aspects of it, understood it, etc. So that's why I felt, there might be people who might disagree, but I didn't find that it was a shock or a hard transition. Because I'd probably been that number two for a number of years and had observed some very good and worked with some very good leaders who allowed you to be there. In some cases, they're equal. Because they actually, in some cases I can recall, they wouldn't necessarily go and do anything unless they'd actually discussed it with you. So you actually became almost joint managing directors or joint GMs in some ways, because that's just the way you work with them, and whether that's how I worked with them or how they wanted to work with me. I don't know. I found it probably happened more than once, so I think it's a bit of both. You drive it and you manufacture as much as them being open to the option. And I think it's really interesting advice that you offer there in that, if you're feeling that your role is completely financially oriented, then perhaps you need to consider ways to collaborate
if it's not organically part of your role.
Correct.
To sit in the chair of the other person, to spend and build that partnership with the leader, to be ready for it, or to be seen as someone that's ready for it.
Or to even understand. I mean, everyone in, I see it all the time, especially when, one function doesn't understand why the other function can't help them or something, or can't, doesn't see this as much of a priority as they do.
Mm.
And I suppose, working with, senior leaders and so forth, and actually putting yourself in their shoes and going, okay, trying to, well, what is affecting them? What are they? How can I help them?
Yeah.
What's the issue that I can help with and understand? And I suppose through that I got to just experience and understanding that it's not as easy as it sometimes looks when you're kind of working very late and you kind of like, well, why am I the only one here? When you do get yourself in the shoes of other functions or leading a sales team, for example, I did for a while, and actually being the lead on working directly with customers, that gives you a very different perspective of what now is important versus you haven't done your expenses. Well, I just come back from a very tough discussion with a customer who's ready to drop a $10 million contract.
Yeah. What's more important?
What's more important? Do you want me to do the expenses, or do you want me to try and work out how we keep this?
Yeah.
So it's those kind of things that help. I think you continue to, or has helped me to continue to build that understanding of not everything that you might see as important
will be important
to everyone else.
And it sort of ties back to that point about value, I think, as well, which is learning what is important and actually thinking about that when you're trying to influence. You talked then about going into sales and leading sales. Now you're an introvert, and there's a bit of a stigma out there that salespeople should be extroverts. I don't personally agree with that, and I've got my opinions, but I think there's just more a belief because of the view of the salesman and the used car kind of character. But tell me, as a leader and as an introvert, as you've described yourself, how do you become effective in leadership, and what are some of the tactics that you use to still be visible, to still to empower, to drive change, without being perhaps the outgoing type?
I think you got to give it a go. I think people, if you're genuine, honest, etc. I suppose more genuine than anything else. People can see that you might not be comfortable in a certain situation where you kind of your hands are twitching, or you kind of stumble with it with your words, or you mix some things up or whatever. And generally, I think if you're showing that you're generally interested in and trying to do your best, I think people give you enough kind of space to kind of be you and accept you, which then allows you, once you kind of feel that you're not trying to be someone that you can't be, and you're comfortable in yourself and you just be yourself, then it all kind of works out okay. I think if you try to be someone you're not, then it doesn't, especially if you're an introvert and you try and be outgoing and try and be very quick with your kind of words and trick and so forth, and be a used car salesman type approach, then it gets you trip yourself up, I think. But then it's also then talking about value, and so from a sales perspective, I was very much about making sure we were taking solutions. So it wasn't about trying to I couldn't, I was no this was an AB Mary, and I was no baking expert. I had very little, but enough understanding to at least say the right words in the right order about how this enzyme and how this flour or whatever will kind of generally work better together versus something else. But that's where you bring your technical support and to go down to that detail. But even you find when you're talking to senior leaders of the business, you're actually working with them on top, they don't understand it either.
I
You don't need to convince them that you're a technical expert.
No.
What you need to obviously demonstrate is that you've got value and you've got a solution for them.
It's going to drive a win for them as well.
And it's going to drive a win for them. So, and once again, I found, being genuine, and you always get, if you get a real tough procurement guy, he might, who's trying to be the opposite to a fast-talking, slick sales guy. You might go, you might get, might not get as far as you thought, but hopefully just building relationship and understanding. Well, I'm not here to, to do just win for me. We got to find a win-win, and that's not always easy. But and it definitely is hard to sell in a new idea. So you do need to have some selling skills, definitely.
Absolutely.
But those can be learnt to a degree. But I found myself confident that if I had a solution, I could talk very confidently about that solution. I think that's also been through my finance career. If I understand, I suppose when we touched on before about understanding the business, I know the numbers, I know the business, I know the brands, or I know what X, Y, Z, then you can form a very rounded point of view and a
clear message.
And be very kind of, you don't need, once again, it's not about knowing everything, it's just like, okay, here's, and it's not being putting caveats on things like, but you do have to go, well, here's how I see it. And here's the information I've used and the assumptions I've got and how I've come to this. And this is, and then to be seen that you actually, that's one part, but then here's the solution that I think, and it might be wrong, it might not be, it might not be wrong, it might not be the best solution.
Absolutely.
But you've started the discussion, you've started a ball rolling potentially, where you go, okay, well that's not, that might not be the right or the best solution, but you're right that we need to do something.
Yes.
What that something is might not be what you think it should be. It might be something else because you one piece of information you might not have, or whatever is X, Y, Z. And once you know that, you go, oh, well, yeah, now it's obvious that maybe we should do this rather than that. But it shouldn't stop you from starting that conversation and showing that you have a point of view and you have a solution, and that leads to you trying to show and demonstrate that you're there to add value.
Absolutely. And so with the, I guess, putting change into place, there's times where you've needed to do that, and sometimes you can take opinions on, but you have to make some action as well. So from that point of view, when you're trying to charge the troops up, and you've talked about town halls before, using different environments to present your message, and it sounds like you do a bit of preparation to make sure you get that right. But what are some of the tools you've used to bring groups on board with ideas and I guess generate that following or outcome that you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, I mainly try and put it into words / pictures, or PowerPoint's great, but keep it short, keep it each slide should only be a few words, a picture maybe, but it's trying to make sure that you know your audience and how do you explain something that might be simple for, if you even explain how the business is performing, how you might explain that to the finance team versus the factory floor. Completely different. Because you're not going to use gross profit and EBITDA and gross margin percentage and working capital and stuff like that. So
they just don't care about that, do they?
Well, it's just a lot of numbers and a lot of words, and I have experienced where you got guys who are finishing a shift, and you try to also go into their environment. So don't kind of bring them into corporate. Try and go to them and try and actually also be show that. Many times I was at the start or finish of a shift, even if it was 10 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock in the morning. You try and capture them in their environment and try and help that way to create some, I suppose, comfort for them. And I have experienced the odd one falling asleep at the end of a shift, and you go, okay, maybe it's tiredness, maybe it's me. But yeah, just trying to craft the message and production, bring it down to talking about if you have working capital inventory discussion. We're just trying to bring it down to and referencing and showing, well, if we had 10 or less boxes of that, we'd be better off. So can we manage by having 10 less, and just try to simplify. And it's not dumbing it down. It's not that. It's just making it relevant, so they can actually go, oh, great. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. But if you went and said we need to drop inventory by 5%, okay, well, what does that mean? What's that mean? Yeah. Is it 1 box, 10 boxes? I don't know the number. I don't know what the inventory is valued at. And even you told me, I wouldn't say, well, is that inventory in the warehouse is worth $1 million? Oh, really? I know I've got 1,200 pallets. So if you want me to decrease that 1,200 pallets down to 1,000 pallets, gotcha. I can do understand that. Yeah. So that's one method I've kind of used to try to tailor the message to the audience so that as best you can. Sometimes it's hard if you have to blend it a little bit, but even then, trying to find those nuggets of ways to just get people to connect and go, understand what you're trying to get to. Yeah, awesome. And that's still something I'm still learning and still developing myself, to be honest. We always learn, don't we? Yep. We talked about that at the start. So, guys, it's probably a few more minutes. We've got one more question I've got to ask, and if there's anything else you want to ask, please fire away. But towards the end of this session, just for everyone, if you can offer some feedback on the survey that we send out, that would be really important to us in terms of creating really valuable content too. So just keep that in mind as we head towards the end. We talked a bit about, I guess, that whole idea of learning and knowing your audience. And last week we spoke to a communications expert, Leonie, on these concepts of knowledge, attitudes, and needs. Right. When you do some research, and I'm assuming you kind of know a little bit of this intuitively when you're going out to the business, but if you're going out to the business for the first time and it's something that's a little bit different for you, how do you start to assess and pick up the things that matter in those communication environments? Oh, okay. I suppose it's just trying to look for those cues that help you to kind of pick up what your communication style and approach needs to be. I really, I suppose, go along and try and make sure that you probably take more of a listening approach initially, and try and kind of draw more questions from them rather than me trying to stand up there and say I know it all and here it all is. I think it's more a case of just trying to approach it in a way that you're there to learn and listen and as much as anything else. Yeah, you'll see what resonates as you go. Yeah, absolutely. The final piece you talked about before was using town halls as well. Yeah. So town halls, obviously, you've talked about the factory, but when you're bringing your corporate or your finance team together, what are some of the structures that you put in place to make that work? I suppose I haven't done anything to be. It's all things to develop on there, to be honest. But it's really making sure you set the time aside and really take the time to engage and be open, because as much as you may even work a lot in the same office, not everyone's comfortable to come and talk to you about something, or even if you try and be at lunchtime and so forth and try and be part of the conversation during lunch. People do want to break away and they don't always feel comfortable maybe in a group to ask you a question. But I suppose it's just trying to make it, not too frequent, because it's just it gets hard for everyone. It loses impact. Try to make it, if you can, do it in smaller groups. I find more effective. Even if the whole finance group is together, not all the finance group are all necessarily, got the same understanding and got the same level of, comfort in regards to asking questions or so forth. So, if you're talking to, break it down into different groups, that once again tailoring the message and what I like to try and do is make sure I'm creating as best you can, and that's probably the part that I still need to work on myself to try and find ways of getting that two-way interaction and getting those questions from anyone in the business, because it's amazing what they do see and may not think is important, but it's trying to draw that out and understand, well, you know, what they're seeing sometimes is very, very helpful to get a bit more context behind some things.
Awesome.
But yeah, it's just trying to make sure that they can get involved and interact with the whole session, and not just have to come along because you've been invited and you sit there and have to listen and so forth. That's all nice and still, I'm sure, and is welcomed, but trying to make it as interactive as possible.
Not so much of a chore. One more question before we wrap up, and it's actually come from Colin, which I think is a really interesting question, and it probably talks to creativity and the future, but maybe not directly on this topic, but a really good question for you. How do you think AI or artificial intelligence will impact your role as a CFO and a finance leader as you move forward in the future?
It should hopefully, I hope it makes it easier. From definitely having the access to the information. Can it, kind of through all the, depends how broad that AI is going, can it replace you from being the business partner and being that decision maker? In some instances it might be, but is it, there's so many aspects to take into consideration that data and information probably can get you a lot of the way there, but can it do the whole way? I'm not sure. Definitely would welcome the information flow, as long as it's can be, as we've discussed, be put into context, summarised, and not having to go through relevantly, not having to go through tranches of detail to try and understand. It's great that So haven't really worked with it, but I'd hope that it could actually help and aid in faster decisions, because we know the world is changing and continues to change very quickly, and the technology and information is coming at lightning speed all the time. So embrace it and use it, and hopefully it'll be definitely a tool and an aid. Will it replace? I hope not. But you don't know.
Well, it's interesting. I think even if there's still a decision to be made, there's someone that needs to be accountable for it, right? So
correct.
Often people need to do that rather than machines. But
exactly. I think you always got to put that people angle on it, and whether that's the only thing you need to add to it, or whether there's, once again, just commercial business understanding. And I think we can look at, with real pet food, the business has grown extremely fast, and I don't think any data would have told us we could do what we've done over the last 2.5 years. I don't think many businesses would try and do, launch a new brand globally, do 9 acquisitions and in a space of 2 years. So all that side of things, to get the facts on all that would be nice, but to actually take the action and make the decision, I don't think data would have told you that.
Yeah, completely. I think there's a lot of intuition and working in the market and understanding your market, right?
Correct.
But, well, guys, thank you very much, and a huge thank you to Jonathan today. I've really appreciated the conversation, and you've shared some huge gold and insight that I think for a lot of our audience will be very valuable. So thank you, mate. I appreciate it.
No, thank you for the time, and I hope I've been able to help people just kind of have a bit more insight into not just my career, but how they can maybe add to their career and the path forward for them.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jonathan. Well, guys, be tuning in the next few weeks. We've got some really interesting conversations coming up. We've got Yugita Nath, who will be talking about working effectively in a multinational matrix structure with many different reporting lines, and I'm sure Jonathan's been through that before. Been there, done that. But a really interesting conversation getting into the detail there. And also an interesting conversation with the team from Thomas. I've got John Lead and Lisa, who will be talking about the formula for strategic leadership. This is breaking it down into some features and I guess traits that you'll be able to apply into the way that you evolve as a strategic leader. Really, really interesting conversation. So book in for those. They're coming up in the next few weeks. If there's any feedback, please offer them. If there's any topics or any speakers you're really interested in us grabbing to get involved, let us know, and we'll be really happy to make that happen. But guys, thanks again. Enjoy what you're doing. All the best with your career. We'll see you at the next time. Cheers.